Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And Jody Lynn, I don't know about you, but I'm excited because an old friend is joining us again today. Joel Elston is on the line. This is so, and like you were saying to him before we got going, I've told you a lot about him. Now you get to actually hear what he has to say. So Joel, hey, how you doing, guy?
Hey, Walt, how are you? Thank you for letting me be on today.
Letting you be on? Are you kidding? I've been trying to get you on for months. What are you talking about?
Well, I realized I had a 4:00 spot open. And I said, this is, just reached out and it'd been law of attraction working out a little bit. We were able to fit it in there.
It literally was. Jody, we actually had a guest, and the guest contacted me by email yesterday and had to cancel.
So it was perfect.
After Joel said, hey, I'm available at this time. It was like absolutely perfect law of attraction.
The universe made way for you, Joel.
Exactly. It does a lot. So I'm really glad it continues.
Yeah, Joel is an expert manifester. I mean, expert.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It really is. It's one of the, once you get good at it, you realize that you can implement it. It's just an amazing tool.
Mm-hmm.
And you've certainly implemented a lot of ways in your life in both directions. I mean, we all do. I mean, we all manifest the stuff that we like and the stuff that we don't like. And you've done stellar work in both directions. But tell us what's been going on lately. Joel, did we lose you? Uh-oh. Maybe we got a bad connection there.
Oh, I got you now. I lost you there for a second.
Ah, there you are. Hello. Did you hear the question?
Yeah. Oh, hello. I lost. Just again, universe working the opposite way now. I missed the entire question, so I'm ready now.
Okay. All right, well, then I'll try again. So the question was, well, I won't give the expanded version. I'll give the short one. What's been going on lately? Uh-oh.
Okay, now I'm good. Sorry.
Okay, can you hear it now?
Wow.
you got some.
I hear you. I do. The elusive question has still not come across my phone.
Okay, so let's try one more time. What has been going on lately with you now?
Okay, well that's good. That's a good one.
Okay.
As you know, I'm running I have my life coaching business where I see people in Richmond, Virginia. Also work with people across the country. I'm working on my second book, The Law of Action. I've been working on that for a while, which has been going really well. I've also in the process right now of getting a new set of addiction treatment centers set up, using a lot of the concepts that we talked about before with law of attraction. Let's see, what else do I have going on? I may actually, I've been nominated and I'm beginning the process of doing a TED Talk.
Ooh, wow.
Wow.
Exciting. Yes. What's the topic?
Well, likely law of attraction. I mean, I'll have something in that vein, and I don't know exactly what it'll be, but I'll come up with an overall law of attraction. I like that concept of neuroscience and the law of attraction, sort of hitting the science side of the law of attraction as well.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. You got to keep us apprised on that one. That's going to be fun to tune in and check that one out.
Yeah, that's sort of, it was one of these, I didn't know it was a bucket list thing until I was nominated, and I just said, oh, okay, that's a bucket list thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Adding it on so you can cross it off.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's a sort of a low key way of, getting everything checked off. When something does manifest you didn't intend, just add it to the bucket list, then check it off and say, wow, look how good I did.
I thought I was the only one that did that. Especially with like to-do lists. If you do something that wasn't on there, I'm like, oh yeah.
Which is, I know that sounds, it is such a great technique in anything, because when you, a lot of times I work with people who are really sort of stuck in a lot of ways in life. And if you can get them to do anything, so just like you're saying, hey, I got the car washed today. Well, that wasn't on the list for today, but let's add it to the list, put a big check mark by that, and then you start that pattern of getting things done. So there's a logic and a science behind that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what you're talking about really is celebrating something in advance of doing it.
Exactly. And it's also a perspective based thing where you can, I have a client that I'm just met with today, and he has been in addiction recovery, and he's been really struggling the last several months. And so last week he was starting to make some progress with some of the goals we were setting. And today he told me, he said, well, I was only able to get my LLC done. I was only able to, and he listed like 6 things that were all pretty big accomplishments, but yet he was still using, I was only able to, or still looking at it like I didn't get it. I'm like, are you kidding me? You didn't do anything for 3 months, and in 1 week you do all of this? And because that is the problem. We do buy into, not only do we keep getting what our energy projects, but we also start rehearsing it, and it becomes the way, so to speak. It's like, that's what happens. We just make it that way. And it's only getting stuff done. And once you adjust that perspective, I said, you got a lot done. You got more than most people would get done in a week. The next week, that sort of becomes the minimum operating field that people want to be in. And it does build on itself, as you said earlier, in either direction.
It's easy to fall into that trap too. I mean, I'm sure it didn't even occur to him that that's what he was doing.
Right. And because his internal dialogue and narrative is, I don't get anything done. He has all these reasons why he doesn't get anything done. So even when he gets a lot accomplished, the energy he's putting out is that he didn't get anything done. And then as we know, the law of attraction only responds to the energy you put out, not what you're saying. And so the energy is still, I'm not getting anything done. So but changing that narrative is a very big deal when it comes to making any change. But you got to not only do the change, but you have to change the narrative of the change in your brain.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's also something that it starts with consciousness. You have to be aware of it.
Absolutely.
You don't know to make the change. If you are aware of it, it's still a challenge. It's not easy at that point, but at least you know what you got to do.
Right. It's just it's that next step, and that the powerful inner dialogue is you've heard, I don't know how many times you and I've talked about the inner dialogue and how it applies to the law of attraction, but the influence the inner dialogue has on the subconscious brain, which is where all of this takes place, is just so underrated by most people. What you say to yourself in any of these scenarios it's the key to your life. How you view your life and the perspective of your life is literally what becomes the architect of your life.
We got a number of people checking in on the live stream, so I want to give some hellos to Jeffrey and to Mark and Tracy and Barbie, who are all checking in. Hello, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Jeffrey actually has a question. He says, can we talk about the link between motivation and timing? What do you think about that?
Well, what do you think about Walt? I'll answer in a second.
Let's go to Jody Lynn. What do you think, Jody Lynn?
Okay. Let's defer to Jody Lynn.
All right, deferring to me. Okay, I'm assuming that it's in the context of like feeling motivated to get something done around that context. So that's the energy that I get around this question. I think that's what he's trying to get at, motivation and timing. Like, what if you don't have the motivation and maybe there's a timeline on it? For me, and I'm going to answer it this way. That might not be it, Jeffrey, so you can explain. But that's the way that I'm interpreting the question. So,
it's a good theory. I like it.
Yeah, for me, what I would say is that I totally lost what I was going to say there. I had something really great to say, and then it's just. Boop.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll bail you out. I'll jump in, and then when you remember, you can jump in. Okay. So for me, the link between motivation and timing is that if our timing isn't what we expect, we don't feel motivated. If the timing is what we expect, we feel motivated. Yes. So we're letting the timing describe and define how we feel. That's the link. So for me, you really want to de-link the two. You don't want your motivation and your timing tied together. Because if you do that, you're basically working against yourself. You're basically saying, universe, you control how I'm going to feel at any given moment.
That's a good point.
That's my take. Joel, what do you think?
I love your example there, because it's the motivation is a very fickle thing. It has a lot of influences that are in and out of your control. And if you're not motivated, but the timing's right. So I love the idea of delinking that anyway. Just if that is a word, delinking.
Well, it is now.
Okay, so we made
just
that.
invented it.
Yeah. So to delink the two, you then allow motivation isn't necessary, but it's a great tool to have. But at the end of the day, you get things done. There was a study done. It is with the opposite of what I believe in. So it went against what I thought it would be. They took a group of people 10 years ago in a study, 100 people, 50 of them were very motivated people who worked out. They worked out intensely. They wanted to be there. The other group was very resistant. They were just doing it to get paid for the study. Now, my interpretation was going to be the motivated group was going to have a lot better results than the non-motivated group, right? That makes sense. Well,
especially for you, because you work out regularly. It's like one of your favorite things to do. So of course you're going to pick that side.
Right. So this study proved literally the exact opposite. The people that worked out with no motivation had just the roughly the same gains as the highly motivated people. So the concept that people were able to go do that and make it happen, even though they weren't motivated to do it, it was just a different mindset. And so their bodies responded to exercise the same way. So I just found it fascinating, but it also explained when you wait to be motivated, you often miss out on a lot. There's a motivation can have, as I said, a lot of factors. And when you use the timing, the law of attraction, the only timing involved with the law of attraction is the timing you believe it has. The law of attraction happens pretty much as fast as you believe that can happen. Abraham Hicks talks about this a lot. There's really no delay except the expected delay. Does that make sense? Did I say that well?
You said it beautifully.
Yeah. So, we operate with what we have around us and what we believe. If I want to, instantly manifest something, it isn't that it can't be done. It's just I have a belief system that there has to be a chain of events that happen to make sense for it to happen. So I have to allow something to happen. Now, I have had it the other way where I've randomly received a call. This is a really new story, but I'll link it back to motivation in just a second, back to Jeffrey's question. But I am working on a project right now that I mentioned about the treatment centers, and there's a whole lot of studies being done recently on psilocybin and the effects on mental health. I'm not going to get deeply into that. That's a big topic right now. Right. So the testing has just proved all of that has just proved incredible. So I'm investigating, what it was going to take to be able to offer psilocybin assisted treatment in Virginia, and it's not legal at this point. So we're working with, we have a lobbyist, and we're doing this. So I've just put this out to the field. I funded this myself. No big deal. Just seeing where we're going. So without even really, I just put the general idea out there. I have had over 20 people call with massive amounts of money.
Ooh.
Wanting to get on board with this. I mean, it's not something that I even have a plan for yet other than that. So I literally, I'm opening with like 4 times more funding than I thought would even be possible to raise if I'm able to make this happen. So, I wasn't motivated to get that far down. My simple motivation allowed me to begin the process, but I wasn't motivated to attract all that. I just simply was able to do that next step. So sometimes just getting the thing going and not worrying about the timing. Timing, if anything, if you're believing timing is necessary, it will prevent a lot of manifestation. Timing is just something that it's something we've made up. Time, the whole concept of time is just made up. It's just a lot of quantum theory, where you have quantum theory dispels time a lot. When molecules that are connected across the universe if there's a change in a molecule, it happens instantly, no matter how far apart. There's a connection in the quantum theory that supports that. The attraction operates on that same realm, but we do have the expectations of our society. So timing and motivation sort of, if you believe you have to be motivated to get up and do these things, then you do have to be motivated. But to separate the link is understanding that none of that is necessary. Those are all prerequisites of the made up human mind. They're not necessary, but we do believe that. And sort of to the point, what you were talking about, you used the word expectations. The expectations is sort of a key word behind all of this. What you expect will almost always override what you think you're feeling. Your expectations are, the biggest thing that happens around the holidays. I often post, a lot of my clients are estranged from their families, and Thanksgiving Day is just another Thursday, except with the expectations attached to that Thursday. That expectation that the family's supposed to look a certain way or do these things creates a lot of depression and anxiety, much more than any other Thursday the rest of the year. And delinking that, that's even another way of looking at it. The delinking of the timing of Thursday, any other Thursday, except with that expectation of the Thursday in the last Thursday of November, has a much different view or expectation than any other Thursday. Does that make sense to you all?
Yeah. If I could add on to that, Joel, I remember the thought that I was having that fluttered away, probably because it wasn't divine timing, but it's also your expectation of what motivation is supposed to look like. I think we look at other people and we decide that's what a motivated person looks like. And then we internally hold on to that concept. Like, if I'm motivated, then I'm going 24/7. I'm getting lots of stuff done. I'm this, I'm that. And for me, the old Jody, if you will, I was very motivated, but the energy, the intention behind it was coming from frustration and fear. That was what was driving the motivation, is these belief systems or this expectation that I had of to be motivated, AKA, which will lead to success. To be motivated means it needs to look like this, and I have to do all of these things. So that energy was distorted, and it was actually delaying the timeline that I had.
Yeah, we forget
Perfectly
that if you're walking in circles, you're motivated, but you're not getting anywhere.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, but it all boils, if you believe that if your expectation is motivation is necessary, then it is on some level, not because of the motivation, but because of your expectation of that. I have the discussion all the time where, I try not to open up a can of worms every time I talk, but usually do.
Well, that's what's fun about you. Let's be perfectly honest.
Yeah. So if there's any complaints, you reach Walt at LOAtoday.net. He usually feels my complaints, but all kidding aside, I was giving a talk a few weeks ago, and this lady, she asked me the question, and this was a metaphysical environment where people were into this stuff. She asked me if I personally believed in crystals and their effect. And I was able to, before she freaked out on me when I said, no, I don't, where I was able to reframe it. I said, but I completely get that you do, and they're super effective for you, because my belief, it isn't the crystals that are powerful. It's your belief that the crystals are powerful, and they're certainly powerful because you believe it. And she didn't destroy me, but she got it. But I believe that expectations or anything else, comes in what you are believing is your field of truth, and that's what you're attracting. So if motivation is something that you think is the most important trait of a successful person, you will never be successful until you're motivated. That's just that expectation. But you also realize motivation can be a great tool for something, but it's not a dead stop from being successful either. It is part of the complex factor of success, but it's not the only factor. You then don't necessarily have to. I know some very successful, unmotivated people. It's not the narrative that wants to be portrayed, but it is. I know a lot of very wealthy, successful people that are they're the opposite of motivated.
In fact, it reminds me that we should differentiate between desire and motivation, because we often equate the two, but they're really very different.
Completely different.
They're like distant cousins,
Yes. And that makes a big difference that when you understand that, because you want to, desire is something desire is a signal. Desire is a very important factor in the law of attraction. It's also very delicately balanced, because when you have too much desire, you actually get on the other side of what you're trying to attract. But the idea that motivation is, because we have this narrative of, like, I get up an early guy. I'm one of these 5 a.m. guys, sometimes even earlier. And I work out in the gym every day and all this. Well, there's a narrative that's the way to do it. Well, I also know some people that sleep to noon every day. They're very fit. They go to the gym at a different time. They work different work schedule. They're equally as successful and as happy as I am. There's no one set chain of events that are supposed to be followed, but we paint broad pictures of what success looks like or what that looks like. And they're not really connected except your own expectations.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And the other thing about desire too is desire is something that we normally associate with what we want, what we
Yes.
like. Motivation doesn't always fit into that category.
No.
In fact, an awful lot about what people talk about when they're talking about motivating is they talk about motivating somebody else, which means getting somebody else to do something they really don't want to do.
True.
And that's that, half of the when Walt and I did this show years ago, one of the things that would come up a lot would be something like, I want my spouse to do this, or I want this to happen. Well, the law of attraction is not about getting other people to do it. It's about what you want and what you're attracting. It's not about making other people do what you think they should be doing, or your own expectations toward that. So that it's all built into what is, it gets really complex at that level, but it seems like we've gotten way down the road from Jeffrey's question, but I think
Jeffrey actually went down the road. I mean, he's off on another question at this point, so why don't we just go to where he went?
Okay. Jeffrey's awesome.
Jeffrey's he's been a fan for years, and we love him so much. But he says, now I'm wondering about the connection between expectations and judgments. Anyone want to untangle that one?
Oh. I'll start, and then I'll get input. So I think a lot of times your judgments influence your expectations. I think you judge something in a certain way, and that creates expectations. I mean, and that's a wonderful question. I really like that, because we're brought up with a bias, and we brought up in how we're supposed to believe religiously or whatever, and we start to develop judgments of other people. We all have natural biases that take place. And so with those judgments, you develop expectations of others. The idea that you either a certain group of people behave a certain way, or stereotypes, that they're part of that expectation based on judgment. When you look at someone who, has a certain behavior, and you're like, oh, well, that's typical for that person. And that judgment came, you're judging that group of people or that one person based on really nothing, but yet now you're expecting them to behave. One of the best studies ever done in the history of studies, in my mind, that's a pretty strong statement, is the years ago in California. It's been replicated several times. Forget the name of the study, but the synopsis is they took the most random third grader they could at a school. They found like the kid that was the most middle kid, IQ wise and all that, and they basically said, they went to the school and they brought his parents in. They said, we tested this young man, and he has the highest IQ of anybody we've ever tested in this school. And now that's not remotely true. That was a lie. He was the most middle kid. But they said this was the highest IQ. So the teachers, the testers started questioning, well, why is he only getting C's, C's and B's? And he's not really doing well, what? And so the parents are like, wow, what are we doing wrong? We didn't know he was that smart. So the following year, they followed up and they were going to test this kid again. Well, they tested him again, and his IQ had risen something that couldn't really happen, a huge amount. He became he tested as a genius a year later. And the only thing that changed was everyone else's expectation of that kid, including that kid. And he started to believe he was a genius. The teachers started saying, we better do better because this kid's a genius and we're not teaching him well. His parents started treating him like a genius. And wow, this kid's a genius. So the judgment of the kid at first was he's just the middle kid. And you taught him like a middle kid. But when you change the judgment of that kid to this kid's a genius, then that expectation becomes wild. Now he's limitless. And that is a great example. That study's been replicated multiple times in other settings, this work settings or whatever. But what you believe, it is built on usually starting judgments and then followed up by expectations. I don't know if that's close, but that's sort of how I see it.
That's good. Well, it reminds me of that study that was conducted in the 1950s where they had, I think there were third grade level classes. They had 3 different classes, 3 different teachers, and they told the teachers, okay, you're getting the advanced students, the second teacher, you're getting the middle students, and the third teacher, you're getting the slow students. And we want to see what you guys can do in order to kind of shift this up. And at the end of the year, they tested 3 classes, and sure enough, the 3 classes, the first group did very well, the second group did middling, the third group did poorly. And then they revealed to everybody that they actually hadn't divided the classes up at all. It was just random distribution. So the kids in the classes had basically acted to what the beliefs of the teachers were.
Yeah, well, completely. And another thing you and I used to talk a lot about this.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him again?
I think we might have.
Uh-oh.
The placebo effect is huge. The placebo effect does so much for the body and the brain and the mind. The healing effect of when you believe something's going to heal you. If you have an expectation of something, it tends to happen. When you have and again, judgment, the connection between judgment, when you judge something is supposed to be a certain way. And I've been convinced that this sugar pill is somehow a miraculous cure for whatever what's ever ailing me. Then your judgment you've already judged it. Now you have an expectation that it's going to cure you, and there's no scientific reason that it cures you, but the placebo effect is an incredibly effective. It's big. It's dismissed. Well, I think they go the wrong way with it. We need more placebo effect. It's a much more effective tool than most medications.
Absolutely true. In fact, there are so many double-blind, placebo-controlled studies that show that the placebo is more effective than the drug.
Yes. And now the bias that a lot of the study groups that are doing, a lot of the doctors that are doing these study groups, this drives me crazy. They're now trying to get people who are susceptible to the placebo effect out of the studies.
Really?
Because they're trying to they have this whole way of testing to get them removed from the studies because they want their drug passed.
Wow.
It almost makes you wonder, did these people, like, at some point in their lives get bullied by somebody who said, if you ever say the word placebo again, you're going to get kicked in the groin. And so they became acclimatized to the idea, we can't have anything to do with a placebo, even though it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sort of, they economically were bullied in the sense that the placebo effect, one of the things I'm fighting right now, as I told you about, is I'm trying to get psilocybin legalized for therapeutic use only in Virginia, is the pharmaceutical companies dread that. That's literally, psilocybin is basically a chemical from mushrooms. Mm-hmm. And you can't get a patent on it. You can't charge $500 per session for it. You literally, it's mushrooms that if you know how to do it, you can grow it in your closet, and for free. And it is ridiculously more effective than anything remotely ever been studied for depression, anxiety, and treatment-resistant addiction. It's just, it's crazy. It's just something that makes it was shocking for me to see the studies. And then I realized the reason this has been made illegal years ago is the effects it was going to have. This will cost eventually pharmaceutical companies almost $1 trillion when this gets done. I believe that, really do. So they don't want placebo effect, which is another effective tool, to even be talked about, because it's just amazing. I was doing a group one day of heroin addicts several years ago, and at the time I was working at a clinic that used Suboxone to offset the withdrawal of heroin. So I was at a group in the morning, and I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't prescribe anything. So the young lady that was there, she had used her Suboxone up, and she didn't have any. So she was going through incredible withdrawal. She was shaking. She was sitting on the floor rocking, and she said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. So I called the doctor and said, I have this young lady here, extreme withdrawal. He said, I'll be there at the end of your group, and I have some at the office. I'll give her some to get through the weekend. I told her that. Now, I'm conducting a group. She's sitting off to the side. The moment I told her he's on the way, she quit rocking. She sat up. She wasn't sweating. Her withdrawal symptoms were removed.
Wow.
Because the solution was on the way. That was strong. That was, again, a connection between I'm expected to withdraw. That expectation. My judgment has always been every time I've stopped this, I've withdrawn. And so it's horrible. So my expectations was to withdraw and be miserable. And then once I alleviated the expectation that she didn't, and something was on the way, she was still going to be 45 minutes away from that relief. But knowing it was on the way, her withdrawal stopped. That's
really something. And it's very, that needs to be the kind of thing that people sit up and pay attention to, because that's the kind of thing that's just, it's right in front of your face. You got to pay attention. Like, look at me. That's what it's saying to us. Look at me.
Yes.
Look at the situation. You must notice this because this is important. It raises the question. I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. I have for a number of years. We talked, Joel, when you were on regularly, we talked about it a lot. We've talked about it since then. The role of judgment and how people are, we judge very often, a lot of the time throughout our lives. And the question that comes to my mind is judgment really positively useful to us? Does it actually help us in some way? Because I swear, every single time we end up talking about it, it makes me want to run for the hills away from it.
You know what, Walt? I was just thinking the same thing. I don't know if I can think of an example of a good judgment. And, in my life and in my coaching practice, when somebody's struggling with a feeling that they don't like, a lot of times it's because of a judgment. And behind that is the expectation. It should be this. And it's not. So therefore there's a judgment of I'm not good enough, or, that person isn't doing right by me, or whatever. Change the expectation, and you can allow the judgment to be released essentially and feel better, or find a different perspective at least. So I like your question.
What do you think, Joel?
I'll defer to Jody Lynn's answer. That's perfect. That's
all
great.
Right.
I love that. That's fantastic. But that's exactly, I sort of see it from always, why do judgments exist? And I do think the mind is a predictor. Its sole goal, its sole goal deep down is homeostasis. It wants to keep you alive. So it creates judgments to protect you. So that snake is bad. My brother died from that snake is a judgment, an observation that can be helpful. Or be able to predict situations, even though this is a different snake, I can be reasonable and extrapolate that it still may be poisonous and I don't want to be near that snake. So I think we were instilled with the ability to judge as a protective mechanism on some level, but as time has gone on, it's become, it's gotten way off base from what it needs to be. Our evolution has made it, it's not protective as much as it is almost preventative now in a negative way.
Well, there's a distinguishing factor, I think, between judgment and discernment, because I can discern that there's a snake, and I can know from past experience that snakes could be harmful to me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to apply a moral approbation to it, because to me, that's what the word judgment is. Judgment is, I'm going to say that the snake is wrong or the snake is bad. That's the judgment part about it from my perspective.
Yeah, but that's a great point. That's a great point, because judgment is more of and that does make more sense, because you do have this, that you're sitting there from a moral perspective, and your moral perspective is dictated by what programming you receive throughout your life, what is moral and what's not moral. There's some things take place in some cultures that seem immoral and others it doesn't. So there's this back and forth that we have to deal with, but I don't, in general, I never like to use the word never, but in general, I think judgment is not good in general. I don't think it serves a lot in today's world, but I can never say never just because the way they're like, maybe there's a good case, but I can't come up with it off the top of my head.
I hear you. Yeah. You want to be cautious, just a little bit careful, just in case there is a real safety factor going on.
Yes.
There.
Yes.
I think though, in where we are in our world today, in our society, judgment can be a really good tool for self-reflection. So for me, when I see myself judging a situation or judging myself, it's my cue to go within and ask some questions about how I see this particular situation or what I believe should be. And if I want to hold on to that belief system or let it go and experience something different.
That's good.
That's good.
I'm reminded of something that Cindy Chavez once, she actually convinced me of this. I'm now on board with her about this. She says that she left behind terminology of judgment. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, and replaced it with I like this, I don't like that, I prefer this, I don't prefer that.
Yeah, I like that.
And just by making that shift, and I've attempted to apply the same thing in my own thought process with a fair amount of success. Boy, does that take a lot of pressure off.
Yeah.
It takes a ton of pressure off because now I'm not trying. The challenging thing about the right and wrong, good and bad terminology is that it's almost impossible to separate it from the voices that we hear in our head that came from other sources. Whereas when it's just about what I like or what I prefer, what I don't like or don't prefer, it's just about me. And all those voices don't play a role anymore.
Yeah. And if most people, when they think about bad in particular, they think about the worst definition of bad. Like awful, scary. You're like the villain of all villains. Like you are so horrible. And that's what we connect our definition to is that broader definition of that somebody else has inserted, or maybe they read it off the internet at some point or whatever. But I would start asking that question of what is bad? What is the definition? And is that even really what you're trying to say? Or is it more accurate to say, I don't really like that? It's not bad. It's not for me.
Joel, you and I actually came up with a word. We invented a word a few years ago to describe it. Awfulizing.
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yes.
It's true.
Because we have a tendency in the brain to go to worst case scenario. It's part of the protective mechanism of the brain. What is the worst case scenario? I have one of my favorite populations to work with, and I had no idea I was going to be effective with this population. I work with a lot of young males, ADD brains, that kind of energy, which I love working with because that's my brain. But one thing that I became very successful at, and I work with a lot of like mid-20 females, college age females. And I had to learn a little bit of a different way to deal with it. So they tend to, again, I'm making a judgment as I'm saying this, but, they tend a lot of times to be very dramatic. So one time, she's an incredible young lady. She texted me. She goes, I need to talk to you as soon as possible. The worst thing happened. And so I texted back and said, how long do you have to live? and she goes, what the hell are you talking about? I go, well, you said the worst thing happened, so you've been diagnosed that you're going to die? And she said, okay, well, not that bad. So,
what a perspective shift in one sentence.
Yeah, she said, so when you get a chance, give me a call, something happened. It's clearly not that bad, but it's almost like that one line was a coaching session. I didn't really even need to talk to her after that because it put it in perspective. It's like, it was a boy problem, so but at the time, but we do use awfulizing language and thoughts, which is very devastating in our life. It's a very bad, taking it to the extreme where everything is just, this is horrible, this is terrible. It's usually, it's very seldom worst case scenario, but yet we go there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I agree with that dramatization, however you say that word for women. And in my, self-study of myself and learning about how I operate as a woman, something that I I studied with Allison Armstrong's principle. She's a relationship coach. She talks a lot about how women relate or have in their brain this perfect woman. So everything is in relation to that perfect woman that does not exist. And that's where the drama comes from, is like, oh, I'm bad in relation to this perfect woman, or I'm not as good in relation to this perfect woman. And it's the realization that that perfect woman does not exist, and something that men inherently know, or at least Allison Armstrong describes, men will look at other men and be like, oh, I want to be more like that. I want to be more like that. They're inspired, but they never see one man as perfect that they have to live up to. And I think that's something that women can learn to do more of, like men.
Well, by the same token, I think there are plenty of men who try to think of themselves as perfect and kill themselves in the process.
True. Yeah.
I mean, the perfection thing can really get you a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
Well, I have a few, one of my views on things that I've observed, if I could, for mental health for my young female clients, if I could delete Instagram from the planet, it would probably be more effective than my psilocybin clinics that I'm planning. It's just, because so many of them is exactly what you're talking about, because these expectations and all, the perfect woman, and and on the other hand, one of my clients is a very successful Instagram model, is what she calls herself. Don't know what that means exactly, but that's what she calls herself. And she makes a lot of money doing it. And well, I find her, she's brilliant, attractive. Her pictures are extremely photoshopped. There's filters. There's all this stuff going on. She is, and her side of it is, she's scared to be seen in public because she doesn't look anything like her online persona.
Yeah.
And so she walks around with a floppy hat on and glasses and doesn't want anybody to see her, because she has created, usually it's the sort of the expectations of looking at others. Her own image that she created looks nothing like her. Now, this is a beautiful, intelligent, athletic, kind, generous woman that has created her own set of fake expectations, can't live up to them, has created her own depression from this.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
But it just hits you between the eyes when you think about that one. Oof.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen, she's just this, you're looking at her energy. She helps with, she rescues pets, but none of that matters because she has this image on her picture that she has to live up to. And she thinks if somebody sees her, they're going to, take a picture of her and post the real picture of her. And that would be embarrassing.
Wow.
That I feel so sad with, like, I'm holding my heart right now, and I feel like I've been in similar positions where I didn't want people to see me. And I think in terms of energy, when we're vulnerable and we show people who we truly are on the inside, whether that's no makeup or some makeup or whatever that looks like, but all of these things that you're describing of her, that she's generous, that she's kind, she's caring, obviously, these are who she is on this inner level. And we don't get to see that as the world because she's hiding, she's only showing this one version of herself. And when you think about it in terms of energy with the law of attraction, when we do that, when we're not stepping into who we actually are, we are diminishing our energy and our capacity to, attract the things that we truly desire in life.
And that's so well said. And that's where the law of attraction comes into play of where, I don't know if we've ever had a podcast where I didn't use the phrase, the law of attraction has no emotion. It just, so I
check this one off the list, by the way.
Yeah. But it really doesn't. So the law of attraction it just responds to that. And her energy, that where I see this just incredible, I have a whole different view and perspective of her, and just in shock that she keeps having bad relationships and keeps finding these incredibly unhealthy men, and all these things are happening in her life. And that's what she's attracting by her own self-image that she created. And it's like, it's all, can we step away and just realize the person that you are? And she is doing incredible work. She's probably going to listen to this. She's really into the law of attraction, made some great strides, but to see this unfold is just gets to the question of, where we're at in today's society, with the Instagrams of the world and all the stuff that causes and the expectations that you've been talking about. So there's a connection in today's world that is a pull against the positive use of the law of attraction, because it seems benign. Like Instagram to me is a silly thing. I check it once every now and then. It doesn't hold any power over me. I only use Facebook as a business positive type thing. But my younger clients, the role that social media plays on their life is just is really incredibly hard to explain. It's it takes up a lot of their bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's an indicator of something that I believe has been going on for generations. It's not new to the current technologically connected generation. It's been going on for a long time, but it's becoming evident in a way that wasn't evident before. And that is that we have a lot of people in the world, and have had for many years, for many generations, a lot of people in the world who don't feel like they actually fit in. And so the way that they can fit in the current technological environment is through social media, because, well, anybody can be on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a replacement mechanism for an actual social connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a lot of people criticize it. That's why a lot of people love it. There's a whole range of opinions about it. But in the bottom, at the core of it, and this is what I'm thinking about as I'm listening to what you guys were just saying, at the core of it, it's really a question of, am I connecting to myself as who I am, or am I connecting to myself as I want other people to think of me in a different way from the way that I would normally want to connect to myself?
And is that coming from a judgment or an expectation that somehow got implanted at some point in your life? I have to look like this and I have to do this to be accepted, to be worthy, to be loved.
So I'm thinking about your client, Joel, and I'm thinking, wow, every one of us does that. Maybe not to the degree that she's been doing it, but we all do that.
100%. Yeah.
I completely agree. And that's the thing, because when you exchange energy with people, I'm sure both of you agree. And so her energy, when she's able to see it and she's able to get her mind straight and feeling well, the most incredible energy you could be around. Just this very kind, it's that energy that is like, how could you not? But when she gets feeling bad about herself, her energy reverses, and she literally, and she feels it, and her body language represents it. The way she sits, she slumps her shoulders, she ducks her head, and doesn't make eye contact, and it translates, and you see that, and as you're saying, we all do that on some level. But when you see somebody doing it at the extreme, it sort of points it out. But it's the authentic way of connection and being able to authentically live without these judgments that we're talking about, or without these expectations, it's so freeing when you get there. One of the things I've done really well in my life, in my pursuit of the life I have today, is I see nothing wrong with it. I drastically cut out my expectations of anyone else. That's not a negative. I don't expect anybody to do anything. I have higher expectations for me, and I love what I do. I love my life. I'm good with my expectations because they're usually positive in the right direction. But I'm not expecting anyone else. And I have not been disappointed because I'm not expecting anything from anyone. It changes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also a question of what you're expecting from yourself, because I think that's also where we trip ourselves up. I'll speak for myself. That's where Walt trips himself up a lot, very, very often.
Yes, you do. By the way, yes, you do.
Thank you for that vote of confidence. I appreciate that.
But that's and I think that's part of it. Not just my expectations of me are based on, it's not the stuff it used to be based on. It's about my expectations of, I want to learn. I'm expecting to learn more. I want to keep bringing this. I have the best life of anyone you could possibly imagine. I feel that way. I want more of that life. I'm expecting more of that life. Mine's built more on, it isn't in any way, my expectations are all being exceeded on a daily basis. I feel that. And so that's that positive way to use expectations toward yourself. But also when you have expectations that become limiting and keep you from functioning, that's a very dangerous place to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially if the expectations are coming from outside. It's bad enough if they're coming from inside.
Yes.
Because there at least you can do something about the expectation itself. From the outside, you can't control somebody else's expectation. So that makes it even more difficult.
Yeah. I have a story about that because
Okay.
I want to challenge that belief of people setting expectations for us or judgments. So me and my husband, we have several businesses. I have a couple businesses on my own. And this was last summer, I think. I remember feeling like overwhelmed. And then I started to feel frustrated, irritated, a little bit pissed off, to be honest with you. I was like, I can't do all of this. I can't run all of these businesses and wash the dishes and cook all of the meals and keep a good household and blah, 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 blah. And I sat with that because I was so upset. And I looked at, okay, well, like, why do I feel like I need to do all of these things? Well, I need to do all of these things to be a good wife. Okay. Who said that? Well, my husband. That was the initial thought. Like, my husband said that's what he expects of me as my wife. And then I challenged myself to ask him, because he never said that out loud. Jody Lynn, I expect as my wife, you're going to do this, and rolled out a list. He never said that. It was me believing that there was that expectation, or that expectation existed. And it took a lot of courage to sit down with him and be like, okay, I have a weird question to ask you. And I'm not sure. And I was very nervous. And I asked the question of, what do you expect of me as your wife? And he said, nothing. I want you to be happy, whatever that looks like. And I'm like, okay, so you don't expect me to do this and this and this and this? And he's like, no. That we're a team. We do those things together. So I had implanted that expectation based on all the other things that I had thought. And I was not only judging myself, but I was perceiving that he was judging me and thinking I was a bad wife. And it was all coming from me and in my head. So I think we need to challenge what we think other people are judging, or what we're feeling judged for at the same time.
That's really great. Because among other things, what that really is saying is, what's the source of, what's the data that I drew my conclusion from?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that situation.
Well, and that idea of it's almost like your expectation of someone's expectation of their expectation of you. It's just, you now have created, it's like expectation to the power of 3, where you've just taken it to that level. And the people that usually the hardest on themselves.
Uh-oh. Come
Really
back, Joel. Come back.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Come back.
I'm expecting you're coming back.
I was like hanging on what's he about to say, and all of a sudden
Me
it disappeared.
Too. Well, now, am I back now? Did I come back?
Okay, there you are. Hello.
Well, I have no idea where you left me, because I was just going on strong, and all of a sudden I realized I'm not there.
Well, you started to give us your point, and then it blanked out, and so you can pretty much start all over again.
Okay, as I said, we the compounded expectation effect is, we go and we filter what we believe, as Jillian was saying. You created this expectation of what you thought your husband was expecting, and you were damaging yourself with that. He's an amazing man that he has no he just wants you to be happy. But I see that a lot with the young people that I work with. They believe their parents' expectation is to go to college and be a lawyer or whatever and 95% of the parents that I work with, they simply want their kids to be happy, healthy, and be able to take care of themselves. That's it. That's it. But yet the kids live up to a false expectation. And when you
No, come back. He's obviously going through it. He's traveling, ladies and gentlemen. He's driving as he's doing the show, and that's why it's cutting out. His cell signal's cutting out.
Yeah.
And hopefully he comes back in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there he goes again. I don't. I
there you
apologize. Yeah. So I won't be so long. I think the internet's telling me to not talk so long. Yeah. My expectations is to be quiet. But this is, I think you got my point. It's just what we do, and it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
It is unfortunate. It's also a bit of a wake up.
Yes,
because
completely.
Jody Lynn's story is definitely a wake up call, right? Because it reminds all of us, oh yeah, I wonder how many times I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
And raising my own hand, I can say, well, today, you mean?
Yeah. Lots.
In the last hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that's one of my growth areas. I really, in my mind, you get to a place that's sort of what I've been shooting for a long time, where there's a nice balance in that. I don't live that way.
Mm-hmm.
Which is powerful.
It is powerful.
Yeah.
It's reassuring too, because it means that I think I'll take that word out of the sentence. What we need to do is make the shift, and the shift is a lot easier to make than we think. Or perhaps better, it's a lot easier than what we fear. That's probably the better way to say it, because that's what you were expressing. You were afraid that if you didn't, if you didn't do the dishes, if you didn't do all that other stuff, it was all going to fall apart. But you had generated that.
Or be judged as bad.
You'd be judged as bad. Yeah.
Yeah. That's brilliant. It's right.
It's rough too at the same time.
Well, the insight's brilliant. The insight that you can see it, because that's sort of the hack here is being able to see it. That's a step, but it doesn't make it any easier. Just knowing the knowledge doesn't make it necessarily easier, but at least you've identified it.
Mm-hmm.
With that thought in mind, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about this book you've been working on for a couple of years now, The Law of Action.
Yes.
And I've asked you about it before, and you give me some quick answers, but give us a little bit of an in-detailed answer. What exactly is the book about?
Okay, so the premise, if the internet allows me, if the internet God allows me,
we'll hope for that.
The premise behind this is my own experience. As Walt knows, I'm a massive believer in the Abraham Hicks version of the law of attraction. Mm-hmm. I'm a 95% on board with everything they say. However, I also, in my personal life and the people I work with, I'm not necessarily a big believer in just manifest it and it happens without any effort. That's never worked for me. But I have many examples of just getting started. I use the analogy sometimes, if you're going to go, the path of action leads to the right action. Even if I get in my car and I want to go to Walt's house, which is, 4 or 5 hours away, maybe, wherever that is. Yeah. So I'll turn on my Waze app and it'll start telling me where to go. If I go the wrong way, it doesn't care. It'll tell me to do a U-turn, go this way. It's self-correcting. But the action required for that to work is I have to be moving. I have to go. If I'm just sitting there, it doesn't have any information to give me. So the law of action operates on the premise of you've got to be taking action. I don't really care what the action is, but any action forward will attract more action leading to what you're attracting. And so I have multiple examples of a lot of, in the beginning of the book, I give probably 20 examples of people who in history have set out to do something and they failed at what they originally intended to do, but they ended up doing something even greater. If they never would have taken the action in the first place, they never would have been in a position for that to move forward. So life has given me many things that I've realized it was the action taken that led me to the action that needed for the law of attraction to implement it, but it wasn't a direct path. And that's just been my experience. The thousands of clients that I've worked with over the years, the ones that buy into that concept of just taking steps forward, or even backwards. But the key is taking steps. It's just, you can't make a wrong move when the law of attraction is involved because it's self-correcting. The right situation will be in place. It's just getting people to believe that that action forward, that action toward anything is going to, it's very seldom for me has there ever been a direct connection between what I'm manifesting and it's there. But when I look backwards and see the connecting events that led to that, it seems like, oh my God, that was perfectly planned. This had to happen for that to happen, for that to happen. But the law of action explains that. Also, I get into sort of the concept of I don't re-explain the law of attraction, but it's the idea for me is understanding that the law of attraction is so much deeper than what most people really realize. And you don't know that the matching action or the intent of the action you're taking plays an equal, if not more important role. And one of the things that Esther Hicks does say in the law of attraction, the original book, she slightly contradicts herself. She actually uses the phrase that action is more powerful than thought. She actually says that part of, and so I usually have the page written down when somebody wants to challenge me on that. They can go read that in the book. But it for some people, she claims that no action is necessary at all. And I believe her. I really do, because it's evident in her life. I'm just talking about for a lot of us, there needs to be some action forward. There's a story, real brief synopsis of a story, but this guy goes to Texas. His goal, his family's sitting there to buy a bank right before the Depression. I've used this example in the air before.
Yeah, I remember this.
And so he goes and he stays at this little hotel across the street from the bank. The name of the town is Cisco, Texas. And it's an oil boom town. And the hotel that he's staying in is really busy. People are sleeping in shifts, and he gets to know the staff real well while he's in negotiation to buy the bank across the street. After 5 days of negotiation, the deal falls through. He doesn't buy the bank. He has to go home and tell his family that he failed on his mission to purchase that bank. But the manager of the bank said, the hotel, this hotel is actually for sale. The owners are really looking to get rid of it. And for less than what you're willing to pay for the bank, the hotel's available. So he buys the hotel, going back to his family, who was originally disappointed because he was sent to buy a bank and ended up with a hotel. Well, 6 years later, the bank went out of business due to the Depression. That was the very first Hilton hotel.
Wow.
So the law of action involved there, the action of going to buy the bank it seemed to be a failure, but it put him in direct alignment to become one of the most successful companies in the history of the planet.
I love that story.
Yeah. And that one, I give those examples and explain, obviously I get in more detail, but that's sort of the overall concept of the law of action, because we often get paralyzed. And I have been so fascinated by just the step of action. One of my friends became very successful during 2008 financial crisis. He lost his job as an accountant, and I shared this with you before too, Walt. He had I was visiting at his house one day, and he lives in the rural part of South Carolina. They're acre lots, house along the way. They didn't have any garbage service, so when I stopped to see him, he was taking his garbage to the dump. And he said, "You want to ride with me?" And I go, "Yeah." And I was trying to talk to him, and he was a CPA. He didn't have many prospects for jobs. He lost the Bank of America job, good money. Well, he had a little savings. He wasn't in good financial shape. And we were talking, so I'm watching. So he stopped at one of the neighbors, and he picked up the neighbor's garbage. And by the time we're done, he stopped at like 10 houses. And I said, "Well, have you ever considered doing garbage collection until you get a job? Would people pay $30 a month for you to take the garbage once a week?" And he goes, "Maybe." And so we just talked about that. He had a pickup truck. So he started doing that. It didn't take him long to get 20 people that were paying him $30 a month. Not a lot of money, but just it got going. So he started thinking, well, that's not that hard to do. More and more people started calling. So he got to a point where he was sort of full, and he was doing all he could do. And he had like 70 people that were paying $30 a month to get his garbage. So he bought another truck, got his cousin to start working with him. They started building more. He eventually goes to the city of Rock Hill, South Carolina, where I used to live. They would have these sales where like old equipment. So he bought this old garbage trunk with the hydraulic systems that weren't working right for like $5,000. And he put $5,000 more in the hydraulic system. And he had his own garbage truck. At one point, he had 27 garbage trucks and employed 300 people.
Wow.
A massive Waste Management, I think was a company, one of the big companies, ended up buying him for a few $1 million a few years later. The law of action of taking the action of going to get the garbage it seems meaningless, but that action led to the action of the thought, which led to the attraction of the other stuff. And that's the exciting part of this for me is we get stuck in our belief system that if I don't find that exact right action, it's not going to work. And I'm the other way. Take action and watch the law of attraction fill the void and make the connections. It's an incredibly powerful tool.
What you're essentially saying is, even if you go in the wrong direction, you're still going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's self-correcting, and as long as you believe and you're going forward and you're thinking, you don't even have to be very specific, but the only wrong action is none. That's the action of sitting there and feeling paralyzed with no hope. As long as there's action taken with hope, that combination is an amazingly powerful tool.
Now, it can also be a bit of a roller coaster because your expectations, there we go back to the word expectation again. Your expectations are, well, it should have played out this way, then it plays out that way. And it throws you out of balance.
Sure.
Something I know very well. I'm going through something like that myself at the moment. But nevertheless, when you come through at the end, you look back, you say, oh, well, that made sense. I could never have predicted that. I mean, if I were writing a script, I would never have written that script because that's just an unbelievable script. No one would ever pay. Right. I couldn't get that sold in Hollywood. Not possible. Right. But it worked. My goodness.
It did. Yeah.
How'd that happen? and that's the way it feels. This has been wonderful. I once again, we go flying past an hour. We're well past an hour. We got to come to a stop. But Joel, first of all, thank you for joining us today. And it's been great talking to you. Great hearing your voice again. My goodness, we got to get you on here again.
Well, I love it.
Awesome.
Well, I love talking with you both. It's so good to meet you, Jody Lynn. I would love to maybe do this again sometime. You and I think a lot alike. I just love your energy. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
It's been awesome for me too. I know it's been awesome for our listeners. We're getting great comments in the live stream too. So definitely a win all the way around. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much, Joel. Thank you very much, Jody Lynn. I mean, I always ask you the same question. How have we done?
So good. So good. Every time I come on the show, I'm thinking, it's always going to be a good one. And every time it surpasses my expectation. And actually, just to make a note, Joel, I think it's so awesome. You had said something in terms of expectations, but I think it was something to the effect of, I expect that it's going to get better and better every single day. And wow, what a belief to hold within your heart for the law of attraction. That's just so beautiful. I got so many nuggets from you today. So.
Well, thank you. And I've had I've gone through some very unique circumstances over the years that reinforce that, but I'm glad I was able to share it and glad it hit home. So great to talk to you both. I look forward to our next time.
All right. Thanks so much, Joel. Thank you so much, Jody Lynn. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.